So good morning once again from India. And thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's an afternoon for some of you, and evening, and late evening, and late night for many of you. We've had a great conversation the last 21 hours, literally, where a lot of things have been discussed, the whole idea of the management education, and the demand, the increasing demand for a socially responsible business practices, especially within the management schools. And one of the issues that have kept coming up is about how management schools have a critical role to play in shaping future leaders. In this context, I think one of the things that we thought about was that, that is social entrepreneurship a way forward? Is this something that we don't necessarily or always talk about in business schools until unless we're researching about it? But it's not something that we build capacities for within schools, or at least it's not the mainstream domain, so to say. But social entrepreneurship is about applying practical, innovative, and sustainable, approaches, or at least so we believe in general, and emphasizing more on the issues and the problems and looking for solutions within that. So that's an ecosystem that you're talking about when you're talking of social entrepreneurship. And the question is, what drives the sensibility? What makes people go for the idea, going for social, this kind of an approach where you build, go for social entrepreneurship or become a social entrepreneur? And how do we, as management schools or society as large, embed this as a way of thinking? I have a stellar panel, and each one of them who's been either a pioneer or an exemplar or is working in that space. And we have 45 minutes. So in the interest of time, I'll just very quickly introduce everyone. I won't, and as I said, and as shared with the rest of the panelists, I won't take too much of time. I won't hold, but we would really like to, hear from all of you. Anuj, who will also be joining us, Anuj Sharma, who's the CEO and founder of Althasar, and his Althasar Impact, which he heads, which is the CEO of, has been working and focusing on the South Asian, Himalayan, and the frontier markets. Basically, they focus on climate change, conflict, agriculture, and livelihoods, and working with local and indigenous communities. That is something, is the domain within which, and he's been fostering, and he's passionate about social entrepreneurship. Archana, who's joining us, Archana Suresh, she's the director from the Telangana impact, social impact project, and she's been within that domain for a long time. She's been leading that and bringing a platform, so to say, to collaborate between the social sector organization and impact investors in Telangana. Vikrant joins us from Kathmandu. He's also a visionary leader who's founded Fight Back Nepal, which is basically looks at reducing violence and harassment of the women. He's successfully integrated program into education system, training 61,000 women and girls, and that's the framework within which he set up his own enterprise. Nadara Ranabahu, she's a senior lecturer within the innovation and entrepreneurship space, and she's joining us from Canterbury. Nadara's research agenda has largely been working on inclusive entrepreneurship, with focus on looking at how various minority groups, especially refugees, immigrants, low-income individuals, and women contribute to the society. With that, and without much, taking up too much time, my opening question to all the panelists, and to go very quickly across, is, how do you see the idea of social entrepreneur? What exactly is social entrepreneurship that we keep talking about? We can start with maybe Nadara. And
thank you very much, Chandrika, for that kind introduction. How I see entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, is what drives my teaching as well as my research. I see social entrepreneurship as identifying social needs in the community by individuals or groups of people and try to find solutions for social needs or social problems through an innovative or entrepreneurial way to create social impact. Here, the social impact is about going beyond the economic dimensions. It is about creating a sustainable impact. That includes, in a way, looking at multiple things, combining things from various sectors to create impact. That's how I described social entrepreneurship.
Anuj, when you hear Nadara speaking about that, does it resonate? Anuj, we can't hear you. So, Anuj, I think there are some audio issues, so we can try. And while we are waiting for you to...
Yeah. Is it better now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah. So for us, like social entrepreneurship is slightly more a larger dimension. Like I've been in this sector for the last 15 years. So for us, social entrepreneurship is all about like sustainability for local and indigenous people, where we build not just a social dimension, but also economic resilience for them to sustain the cultures, their unique customs, and also the kind of ecosystem we are talking about, where there is a balance between economic viability and also social viability. At the same time, there is a room for us to have a win-all situation where both sides can win, not just one capitalist side coming in.
Actually, taking that to you and parking that question, the same question with you.
Chandrika ji and everyone else, hello. I lead CSR for the state of Telangana. That's about 35 million people. And this is a very, very relevant question. I'm just going to keep it simple. For me, social entrepreneurship is also an initiative where you're looking for solutions for community problems in a sustainable manner. And I think it's also very, very important to have an ecosystem of stakeholders and players who can sort of help you move the needle on social entrepreneurship as you forge through that journey. This is, a little something that I gleaned in my 18 years of work, both in the corporate world and in the development sector. So I bring in a blend of that experience. And this is how I would put it, Chandrika ji. Solutions for community problems that could be social, cultural, economic, but something that is sustainable and can be executed with through a network of stakeholders, like-minded folks. Yeah,
I think what we were being reminded in the chat or being asked in the chat is that is there a difference between how a Western world and the Asian world understands social entrepreneurship? Because we are coming from a certain context and location where the challenges, the social and the ecological challenges may be very different. Issues of economic equity may be very different. You have a country where we add, should we say, the number of people who want employment. We'll have 90 million people between 2020 and 2030 who will go into that space just within India. So we're looking at a different framework of social entrepreneurship, probably. Vikrant, what do you think about that? With that question, and I'll come back to you, Anuj, with that.
So yeah, of course. There are differences on how let's say an Asian entrepreneur, a South Asian entrepreneur, and an Western entrepreneur would deal with situation, because the cultural context and the nuance of the social problems are different. However, I think there are certain let's say frameworks that might be common. For example, if I define social entrepreneurship, I've got this 3S framework. One is strengthen. So it's strengthening individual empowerment. The other is strengthening engagement and, engagement with stakeholders and community, and strengthen the individual to the society as a whole. The other S is, it has to scale. It has to impact at scale. And the other S is, of course, it has to be sustainable. So this is something more a general framework which could be applied for West and East altogether. But of course, depending on the sector, and there will be differences on how you approach a problem.
And could you give us some examples of, from your own Fight Back Nepal, how you talk of strengthening communities and building resilience. So can you give us some examples of that, of how you've done it in your own context?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, just to give you a small context of, because the story of Fight Back is connected with my story. So violence and harassment against women and girls was something that always touched my heart when I was growing up. When a daughter was born, I felt a need to address it personally. I was a software engineer working in a bank. I quit my, corporate job, and, I just went through this wild phase of being a social entrepreneur. So this has gone on for the last 10 years. And so the idea was to combine self-defense education with, with personal safety. So to develop mental, vocal, and physical skills to deal with violence and harassment, because it's such a complex thing, dealing with violence and harassment. Early on, what we realized was, just training women and girls was not enough. So we had to engage stakeholders, men, boys, parents, and teachers. So we developed this holistic program where we empower women and girls and engage stakeholders. That's how we do it. And we've been working with individuals with disability. We've been working with adolescent population, and we're engaging stakeholders through our in-person and online services. So during COVID, we kind of pivoted towards online service, and we're developing an e-learning platform. So that's how we're doing it. And of course, the stakeholder and the community, the local government, NGOs, INGOs, all the, let's say all these actors are crucial, private sector, to deliver the impact. And of course, the wider, let's say the international community, like accelerated programs, social impact funds, very, very important for an idea to survive, thrive, and try to scale.
And coming back to you, I mean, like we're talking about resilience and building capacities in local communities. I mean, what's the framework that you use when you're talking, when you are, with ALCSR impact?
So ALCSR impact is also a work which we kind of started out in 2007 when impact investing as a whole was emerging globally. And what we identified is the next decade, there was lots of wealth which was created in impact investing, lots of social technology created. But somehow we left behind the most critical element in that, the stakeholders who were supposed to be the beneficiaries. So we focused more on the process and procedure part, like ESG and SDG kind of frameworks, but we forgot the human-centered design. And that's what we at ALCSR Impact wanted to kind of get it to the fore. Social technology needs to be at the first. They need to be the first to be taken care, and they need to have a way of unlocking their economic resilience and also social upliftment as well. And that's where we kind of came up with a very simplistic model. And later on, we came to know that that was first of its kind in Asia, was lighthouse phase-based investing. And when we started out, we were backing only local people from a community. If I'm in Kashmir, if I'm Ladakh, if I'm Sikkim, if I'm Nepal, we are only backing local peoples from there. And to our surprise, not a single social enterprise failed. Every single social enterprise has survived. And for a very simple reason that it's not just the entrepreneur, it's the whole community which come forward and start backing that entrepreneur because they have a much larger reason for them to back it. It's not just economic, but also a big hope that they see in that entrepreneur. And in them, they see a reflection of what is the possibility they can have for a larger entrepreneurship-driven world as well, as we are talking.
Thank you, Anuj. Archana, you've been straddling three worlds, right? You straddle the world of the social sector, you straddle the world of the government on policy making, so to say, and you also straddle the world of the social impact investors and trying to build those bridges. And when you're hearing Vikrant and Anuj talk about resilience, strength, community, I'm just wondering, how does it work, and what is it that you're doing to build those ecosystems?
So, Chandrikaji, again, thank you for the question. I think just to give everybody else context here, what we do in TSIG, Telangana Social Impact Group, is we represent the Telangana government, and we offer pro bono services connecting 500 plus corporates to 200 plus NGOs and 35 government departments. So, like you rightly pointed out, Chandrikaji, we are that conduit or that bridge between these different ecosystems. And I find that, so Hyderabad as such has a very vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we have T-Works, which is the largest prototyping center in the country, where there are these initiatives by entrepreneurs who are looking to solve community problems. So there is that T-Works bubble, then there is T-Hub, which is at the intersection of technology and entrepreneurship. And there are these folks who are coming up with innovations that will solve day-to-day problems. And I'll give you an example. So there is this one youngster who's in the assistive technology space, who's created a contraption for the visually impaired. And essentially is again looking for funding, because I think social entrepreneurship goes hand in hand with one of my speakers here said, economic resilience. I mean, unless an idea is backed up monetarily, it will not lead to fruition. So what I am very passionate about is sniffing out those ideas and pitching them to the corporates, because that's where the money lies. And there are leaders there who want to sort of bet on these entrepreneurs, right, going forward. So we've been quite active, passionate about pitching these entrepreneurial ideas to corporates, because corporates are again working in this big, I won't say silo, but they're in this ecosystem by themselves, and they don't have access to all these ideas. And TSIG by itself is actually playing that role of a conduit or a bridge between entrepreneurs and say the corporate, and helping corporate understand that there are these solutions that are emerging thick and fast, and they need to be backed up, right, for them to be taken to scale. So that's what we've been doing. We raised $1 million last year that got pumped into the state of Telangana through these various corporates, and a lot's happening. So back to you, Chandrikaji.
Thank you, Archana. Now, Raj, we're listening to this and you're talking about building ecosystems, and everyone's talking about what's critical for building those ecosystems. You've been working in this space, and you've probably seen a lot more examples and a lot of people from refugees to immigrants to low-income individuals, women. What do you think are the critical parts of building these larger social entrepreneurial ecosystems?
I think there are a number of factors we need to consider when developing larger ecosystems. As rightly pointed out, we need government or policy backing. That's one of the first things I would say that we need. And the second thing is we need a skilled workforce. We need people passionate about social justice. We need people passionate about going beyond their required duties, and then going a step further and looking at social issues and how to address them. And people, policy, as well as money and other support investments, people bridging the gap between the person who's interested in doing something and the resources they require. As we all know, we all as entrepreneurs, we lack money, we need resources to build things. I think policy support, in my opinion, policy should facilitate development of these ecosystems, and policy skill development in terms of entrepreneurs, because there are a lot of passionate people who are concerned about social justice. They need a bit of a nudge to do these things. So I think those factors will help in developing the ecosystem. Of course, I'm in a business school, and I do see a role for education for universities as well in developing this ecosystem. Especially, it's not only entrepreneurs. We need people, as you said earlier, design thinkers who can help in developing something. We need people, scientists, to come up with some of the breakthrough innovations and transfer that to businesses so that they can scale up things. So I think in terms of solutions, the ecosystem, I see a role for universities as well in terms of playing. I mean, it's more about skill development and capacity building as well. Excuse me.
Fascinating, interesting, very interesting. I mean, like, and when Nadara is saying that, she sees a role for management schools, and both Nadara and I are, speaking from our locations in management schools. But the three of you are also, part of creating that things as practitioners. So where do you see something like a management school fitting into all this? And management education for that school, for that matter. Question for anyone who wants to take it.
Yeah. So if I take a chance, so for us, like education institutions have been very kind. Like, so when we started out this place-based investing, now there are two leading IMs which are teaching about us, and there are three more social sciences education institutions as well, which have adopted the social entrepreneurs that we are backing as well. So there has been very much huge amount of inclusive way of academic institutions who are welcoming these social entrepreneurs from hinterlands come into the classes and having a dialogue with the students as well. And this also gives a very different kind of I will say, hope to the students as well, that if these hinterland entrepreneurs can do it with so less resources, so less money, then why not these students as well? And with a present environment where technology has been at the forefront of various things, but at the same time, the job market has been suffering as well. Being a social entrepreneur is the best thing to happen today for any of these management students as well. And with all due respect, like SPGen has been in a very advanced forefront of this whole thing as well. Like you were brave enough to send students of yours to Kashmir and Ladakh and other hinterlands of India as well for our entrepreneurs, and they were super beneficial as well. So having a cutting edge management student knowledge vis-a-vis the grassroots entrepreneur experience, I think it's a very good combination, and it can co-create something which is very important for the future of education as well for all of us. The experiential learning is fascinating. Yeah.
Interesting. Anush, do you have any favorites in terms of the social enterprises you've incubated?
I think all of them have their own amazing stories, if you put it like this. And they will all be talking about some or the other way of resilience. So one or other is not educated. Somebody is in a conflict geography, somebody is in a remote geography where to reach there takes 2 days. Or you're talking about a geography which is laden with lots of regulations as well. Like Vikrant comes from a place where ease of doing business is of a different dimension, but still people like him are like showing the example to the world that if they can do it in a place like that, it is also creating lots of hope for other entrepreneurs to also follow it.
So could you just tell us, for the sake, because there's an audience here which doesn't necessarily know all the these entrepreneurial enterprises. So could you share a little bit about them?
Yeah, so one of the entrepreneurs is primarily coming from a Dalit community, and he's one of the very few entrepreneurs from the state of UP, which is equivalent to a US population, if I put it like this. And he's the first majority-owned Dalit entrepreneur. And he's not just kind of working for himself, but he's backing close to 5,000 Dalit farmers, which are coming from his own community. And just one step of him towards entrepreneurship has kind of given a very strong positive impetus to the whole region. And there's a very good chance that because of him, these 5,000 plus farmers are able to increase their income levels annually, which is one of the most phenomenal thing, if I put it like this. And the same way, there is an entrepreneur from deep Himalaya, which is the last village of India, if I put it like this, which is on one side is China, one side is Pakistan, one side is Afghanistan. And this is also one of the longest glacier of the world, and which is the source of Indus River and a few others as well. And like 14 families is the only families which are left in this village. So when he became an entrepreneur, that gave a signal to his lots of community members that it is possible. And also the migration has stopped now. They have a hope. They have restarted their school, and they also have kind of got into something very basic, if I say, medical and other facilities as well. So lots of different, I'll say, economic indicators and social indicators are propped up because of just one use case of social development.
Vikrant, do you also see that in the enterprise that you set up? And that the social indicators or other things have changed because and the nature of that enterprise?
Of course, yeah. I mean, could you repeat the question once more?
I was just wondering, Anuj was sharing examples of how, certain social indicators have changed because of the kind of initiatives taken by community in leading certain enterprises. So I was wondering whether within the ecosystem that you are creating or the organization that you lead, do you see any change, and what is the nature of that change?
Yeah, of course. I mean, in case of, the work what Fightback has done, there's been a direct impact on 100,000 plus, individuals in the last 10 years. And we've worked with, governments, NGOs, the private sector, and there's been an overwhelming positive response from all the, it's all the stakeholders, and we've been, we've been evaluated multiple times, and and the result is consistent. So of course, with all this, for example, I can give you an example. We train visually impaired women for the past 10 years every year, and one of the issue was public vehicle sexual harassment. And now when we do a survey in that cohort of population, they have said that because we did the training, because we had a media coverage, that has gone down. Just to give you an example. So yeah, so of course there has been a lot of change, and the impact studies that we've undergone shows that. Thank you.
Thank you. Archana,
Yeah, Chandra, I have some thoughts. I believe that entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey. I started my NGO 12 years ago, and I realized then that I wish I'd had a little bit of hand holding. Sometimes you're busy managing so much that you're just looking for a little support of any sort, really. And now, because I'm on the other side, where I have this platform which I could use for the benefit of people, what I try to do in my role in TSIG, in Telangana Social Impact Group, is one, for youngsters in B schools, for instance, we try and give them internship opportunities, whether it's in corporates or NGOs, enabling them to sort of improve their learning process, because a lot of entrepreneurs are also looking for mentors, for instance, right? And it's important to sort of point them in the right direction or plug them into an ecosystem that will enable that. So that is as far as some of the B school students are concerned. I also try and give a lot of youngsters access to platforms. So whether it is the CII, the Confederation of Indian Industry, there's something called HISIA, Hyderabad Software Enterprises Association. There's the FTCCI, Federation of Telangana Chamber of Commerce. So there are these multiple platforms that, personally, we try and make inroads into for youngsters who are on that entrepreneurial journey. That is one. And then in the rural parts of Telangana, like I said, the state has 35 million people. There are lots of SHGs, right? Self-help groups that are also looking for some expertise, some mentoring, some hand-holding. So that's where we step in. TSIG steps in and sort of, irons out the creases in their processes, really, to enable them to get access to resources or to people that will sort of make that journey of entrepreneurship a little easier for them. So that's what we've been doing from a Telangana Social Impact Group perspective. Chandrika ji, back to you.
Thank you, Archana. Nadra, as you're listening to these conversations here, I'm sure a lot of things are popping up in your mind, you're thinking, okay, if we also come from an ecosystem sometimes where you think, especially in Global South, where you think that management, schools are supposed to be for getting you the job and the final placement rather than preparing people for entrepreneurship of any kind, forget social entrepreneurship. So I'm just wondering whether it's at odds with this conversation that we are having here. Is it the way forward, or is it at odds with what many management schools are, largely supposed to focus on?
I don't think so. Mainly because right now business schools are focused on developing both entrepreneurship as well as employees, employers, all sorts of people or for all sorts of careers. For example, I was listening to all these interesting discussions, and business schools such as UC Business School, we have a social entrepreneurship course. We teach about social entrepreneurship. We have a center for entrepreneurship to develop budding entrepreneurs and connect them to the ecosystem. And of course, there are some tensions, mainly because the mainstream media, mainstream discourse is all about profit making. It's all about these heroes, all about making money. And I think that is a challenge we have in business schools. But I personally believe that we are, as business schools, as I see in a lot of other countries, including New Zealand as well as in other countries, a lot of business schools are moving towards the direction of employers, employees, entrepreneurs, all sorts of careers. In addition, I should point out that we need fundamental courses such as ethics, responsibility, sustainability, impact, social justice to do a course like social entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship at the capstone or 300 or third year levels. So the fundamental courses should be inbuilt into the curriculum of any school to do a course like social entrepreneurship or even sustainable businesses. Otherwise, the students don't have that skill set, the knowledge at the foundational level. So it's a holistic effort. And to answer shortly, business schools are moving towards entrepreneurship as well as employers and employees. It's a holistic process now.
I could see Anuj and Archana, nodding very vigorously when Nadara was suggesting that, you need to have ethics, sustainability, sustainable impact, as very much as a core foundations of any business education. Do you have some thoughts on that, Anuj, Archana?
So I'm being very candid in this. You go in a business school, you spend $50,000 to $100,000, okay, and then you expect them to be doing charity. That's not going to happen. So either we find a way that our kids who are coming from middle class families get an education which is free. They will be more than willing to do lots of charity initiatives and other things. But without that, market-driven forces are going to happen because they have to pay their loans and other things. So we need to find a balance. Like, I'm a practitioner, and I will be very honest. I don't want to kill a youngster's dream of having a lifestyle which they deserve. And if they want to have a decent lifestyle, then they need to find a way to get it. Like in Western world, that's where the comparison comes in. Like if I'm sitting in New York right now, half of the population cannot earn a single meal here. And there's so much homelessness and other things. But at the same time, we have one of the largest concentration of billionaires in the city. So there's a stark income inequality. And then somebody who has money talks about ethics and other things in their own definitions, but they don't follow it. So we need to find some kind of a way where we get some kind of a like if I say opportunities for these kids who are coming out of management school to balance their lifestyle, their loan repayment capabilities, and also social good. We need to have a finer balance as well. Otherwise, it's not right to talk about like a non-profit and for-profit model for a business school. It's just not going to happen.
Archana, would you like to add to that? I think Archana's frozen, or Archana, would you like to add your thoughts?
Sorry. Yeah. Chandra-ji, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Also, I think, I mean, of course, Anuj raised a very good point, of course, about income inequalities and different yardsticks for different people, right, in that entrepreneurial journey. But I also think that it's also about changing the mindset of resource providers, in this particular case, in corporates, for instance, right? Like I'm talking about the CSR. The CSR piece. CSR is corporate social responsibility, for those of some of us who may not be aware. And corporates are mandated to deploy 2% of their funds into for underserved communities, really, or in social welfare projects. So I think it's also about educating corporates about the need to sort of support these programs and initiatives that young entrepreneurs, young students come up with. Because I'm just saying that, and this has been my experience, a lot of corporates are willing to sponsor building of toilets in say government schools, or biomedical infrastructure in hospitals. There's a very strong request and intent that they want. So what's in it for me? Mindset takes over, right? They're looking at signage, they're looking at, what can emerge out of this particular program from a CSR, but then funds. I don't think a lot of corporates know about it enough, right? And like I said, since the financial resources are tremendous in this space, I think there's also a need to sort of create more platforms where corporates can sort of join in the conversation to understand the social entrepreneurship ecosystem better. I hope I'm making sense, and I hope I've conveyed.
This is still a conversation. Yes, absolutely, Archana. But this is still a conversation which is not really had, and especially in some of the geographies that we are. While that conversation happens in many other geographies, this is still a conversation on social entrepreneurship, even entrepreneurship for that matter. And this come in a country where majority of the businesses are family businesses. Which by default talk about, so we talk business, but we don't necessarily, Anuj, talk about, social businesses, because there's almost a split in terms of how we are thinking about those spaces. It's only in the last few years that this conversation has even started about having social businesses or social entrepreneurship. Social business, as Professor Yunus would talk about it, and saying that it is a business, which Anuj, you were alluding to, that we need to talk about it as a business, because nobody's going to be in the space only to solve problems or issues. It doesn't sound very romantic or idealistic, but at the same time, you're saying as a social entrepreneurship needs to be thought about as a business, engaging with issues, but also dealing with looking at profitability of the business. Vikrant, any last thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, it has to, all the romantic version has to kind of like, we have to put that aside, and and kind of like bring in the framework that, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an innovator. This is the, problem, and these are the solutions. And by offering these solutions, which has a social impact, I'm able to be sustainable, create wealth, and be like any commercial, entity. So I think that would be a kind of like an empowering framework for a social entrepreneur. I totally agree. Thank you.
The last couple of minutes. Any thoughts on the space?
I would like to add that we should not also forget that youth are taking a lot of action in terms of climate change and other things right now. So the context is changing, the society is changing, people are much more aware of these issues as well. While I fully agree that we need to look at social enterprises as a business, we see a lot of appetite for that as well right now because the context is changing. People are much more aware of these issues. We should not forget about that as well.
Anuj?
So I've been very hopeful for this sector. I hope like we all find a way to change the paradigm as well. And that's where the academic practitioners intersectional approach is a very important thing. So we say like business schools can actually transform the way we also look up to social developments. So if a entity like Apple could be $3 trillion, why not a Himalaya or Amazon rainforest could be not be valued like that? Right now, it is not even 5% of Apple's valuation that you're valuing the whole entire economy of Himalaya, which is not at all feasible because Himalayas, 25% of humanity depends. So we need to find solutions, and that's where like management schools could come up with some kind of anecdotes and solutions for us to back as practitioners. And that is something which we feel is a very strong hope that we have for the future as well.
Anuj. Archana, any last thoughts on this space? On
Yes,
whether this is a space that could catalyze change or would help us build more inclusive future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have 2 cents to share. I think I think this space of social entrepreneurs needs more allies. Allies who can connect them to more mentors, to more financial resources, to more platforms where their journey can continue without sort of running into obstacles that will sort of slow down the pace. So I think I mean I am all for more partnerships between between B schools and the corporate, B schools and the government, B schools and the NGO ecosystem, those partners. So I think more needs to be done to sort of expand that network of people who are action oriented and who want to help really, because at the end of the day, our country and the world needs more innovators, needs more thinkers and doers. So yeah, I'm all for creating that network of allies. Chandrika-ji, back to you.
I think what I'm hearing is that, of course, you need some foundational holistic skills, which should be integrated into management education. But then you also need to create a mindset where you will have a section of the youth who will look at issues and challenges which are there all around and see it as a business and potentially a space where they can make a difference. One of the critical part that which I think both Anuj and Vikrant and Archana and another I have emphasized is how a social entrepreneur or entrepreneurs should with creating communities which are resilient, which can have their which can scale at a certain stage, but also build strengthen local ecosystems and local communities while responding to local challenges. So I just want to thank all of you for taking the time. I know it's different time zones across here, but thank you so much for joining us this evening, morning, afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your
Thanks for this
coordination as well.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes.
Thank you. Namaskar. Thank you.
Yeah.